है ना, कितना अच्छा लगता है ना, एक एक दिन में करके साइड हो जाओ, 5 दिन बाद यूपीएससी का पेपर आ जाए, थिंग्स बिकम्स वेरी इजी इन लाइफ. Anyway, so how many of you have an understanding of medieval India? There is one very important question. Where does ancient ends and where does medieval starts? This is an important question for everyone. Do you have any answer for that? कुछ भी आंसर, कोई जजमेंट नहीं है मेरी तरफ से आज. देखो, as such there is no hard and fast rule. Okay, when we move from ancient India to medieval India, there is no hard and fast rule. यानी कि we can define कि this is the particular year, है ना, where things have changed. Because all of you know, ऐसा कोई defining year हमारी पर्सनल लाइफ में आ सकता है, नेशन की लाइफ में अब सेंचुरीज में ऐसे नहीं आ सकता. Okay, so that's the most important thing is previously there used to be only one ancient India and then medieval India. The सबसे simplistic जो assumption है, that is this was Hindu rule and this was Muslim rule, है ना, this was used by the British. But if we see the political life, economic life, social life, cultural life, as well as the religious life, between these two specific parts of history, yes, there is a transitory period, and this transition is known as early medieval period. Okay, so between ancient India and medieval India, we have a transitory phase. Okay, and this transitory phase is often considered as India's part of feudalism. Okay, majority of you use the word feudal in life. ये तो बहुत feudal लोग हैं, है ना? What is the meaning of feudal? Translation नहीं करना, सामंतवाद. What is the meaning of feudal as such? Meaning और translation में difference होता है? Yes. Yes. Yes, very good. Okay. Land based hierarchy. ये टेक्निकल वर्ड्स आए ना, बिल्कुल पढ़ के लिख के आए हैं. This is what is feudalism is. Feudalism was very pronounced in Europe. Okay, and Marxist historian, they use the same in case of India also. But when we'll study feudalism in India, it is very different from Europe. Okay, उसको बाद में डिस्कस करेंगे, अभी उतनी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी में नहीं जाते हैं. But in general, if you see ancient India, it starts from 2 million years ago and goes all the way up to 750 AD. This intermediate period is from 750 to 1200. And finally, the beginning of medieval India from 1200 to all the way to the middle of 18th century. Okay, so roughly this is a time period. But if anyone asks you in interview कि ये बहुत ही ज़्यादा logical तरीका है क्या, this specific year, no, this is not. But कुछ तो आपको मेरे को एक middle ground लेके आना पड़ेगा ना, ठीक है? The early medieval period has some characteristics which ensures transition from ancient India to medieval India. We'll discuss about that. Okay, we'll discuss about the basic timeline. So before Delhi Sultanate, yesterday we were discussing the tripartite struggle, है ना? This was the struggle between three important dynasties of India, है ना? कौन-कौन सा dynasty है? Alas, Pratiharas and Rashtrakutas. These three powers were so much interested in this tripartite struggle that eventually it led to decentralization of power, and this decentralization of power made it very easy for the invaders to come and then eventually dominate India. Okay, so this is the part which you need to understand, that struggle for Kannauj. Why Kannauj became a very important bone of contention? One, it was at the heartland of the alluvial plain. This is the first thing. Second, this was the capital of Harshvardhana. Harshvardhana himself was very famous. That's why everybody wanted to have the throne, on which once upon a time Harshvardhana sat. So it was a power of prestige. Prestige chahiye, इज्जत चाहिए जिंदगी में. That's why everybody was fighting for this area. So these three dynasties kept on fighting, and that led to a political vacuum, and that vacuum eventually was filled by the coming of the Turks. But at the same time, we also need to understand the intermixing or the coming of the Islam. The first interaction of Islam with India, it happens around 712 AD. All of you know about this? Okay, and the first area which came under their control was Sindh, and the general was Muhammad bin Qasim. Okay, so he came. Okay, there were some specific events in which the cargo etc. of the Arab people that was looted and plundered. So what they were saying, this Debel port, these ports or the Arab ships are being captured. That's why these people need to get control over Sindh. So once they control Sindh, this will lead to better life or for the Arabs. एक तरीके से what they were saying, there is so much of piracy in this area and we want to get rid of it. Yes, this is an excuse. Okay, so with the coming of the Islam in India, some new features came which were not there in the erstwhile Hinduism. Okay, like one very important feature, as all of you know, it was the institution of Jizya. This came into picture, or the coming of the Sufis. Okay, so many things, many new things in fact became with the coming of Muslims. The word Hindu itself, it's used by the Arabs. The river Sindhu or the Indus River. Okay, and the pronouncement of Arab was like Hindu or Sindhu. That's how we see the name Hindu itself. It came because of interaction between Hindus and Arabs. Okay, so this is the basic interaction which starts from the beginning of 8th century. Okay, so we are going to see the transition. But Muhammad bin Qasim, even though he was able to defeat the ruler Dahir, they were not able to maintain their rule for centuries. Within next 20-30 years, they had to go back. Okay, so this is the first interaction. After this, there are two important personalities. One is Mahmud and the second one is Muhammad Ghuri. Okay, so Mahmud of Ghazni, as all of you know, he had one specific hobby and that was raid. Raid kya kar rahe the? From 1000 to 1026, he raided India 17 times. Okay, and there were various looting and plundering. Do you know the reason why they used to come towards India? What was the reason? Yes, India had wealth and this area does not have resources to sustain an empire. Okay, that's why it was easy for them to come towards India, loot and plunder, and then went back. Why they were able to loot and plunder India? It was not politically centralized, so it was easy for any power to come and loot and plunder. There were two specific events, like all of us have understood that there was political instability in India. At the same time, temples as well as Buddhist monasteries, they were symbol of attraction. सबसे ज़्यादा सोना कहाँ रखते हैं, है ना? It is in the temples. That's why it was easy for them कि चलो ठीक है, it was like bank कि चलो ठीक है, come, take money and went back. So one thing which is particular difference between Ghazni and then eventually Ghuri, Ghazni never tried to create any empire in India. He never tried. What he did, he came, took money and went out. But Muhammad Ghuri, his successor, that person wanted to create an empire. Okay, he had some specific design for that. Alright, before coming and fighting in the Battle of Tarain, he was able to take care of Kabul as well as Multan. Okay, in the first Battle of Tarain, all of you know, Prithviraj Chauhan, he was victorious. And while he was celebrating, Muhammad Ghuri, he was preparing for the next battle. Okay, तो prelims pass करके खुश नहीं होना है. Reason being, the main fight is Mains. Anyway, so in the second battle, Muhammad Ghuri, he was able to defeat Prithviraj Chauhan, and this is the beginning of the rule of we can say precursor to the establishment of Delhi Sultanate. Okay, from 1192 till 1206, Delhi Sultanate was not independent. It was just an extension of Ghurid Empire. Okay, it remained an extension. Reason being, it was controlled from outside. By 1206, Mahmud Ghuri died, and his general Qutbuddin Aibak, he announced the establishment of Delhi Sultanate. So, even though they lost the battle by 1192, the establishment of Delhi Sultanate starts from 1206. And Qutbuddin Aibak himself, he was a slave. Okay, that's why it is the first dynasty which ruled over the Delhi Sultanate. It is known as Slave Dynasty. Yeah, it is. They were not like domestic slaves. They were having all the power and perks. And if they were able, they were given an opportunity to rise to even become the Sultan. So this is how Qutbuddin Aibak, after the death of Mahmud Ghuri, he became independent. Okay, we'll think about all the other stories, क्या क्या हुआ उसके बाद में. But this is how the inroads were made, the initial. तो आपको क्या याद रखना? The first interaction of the Muslim world with India, it starts from 8th century. Okay, then in between we had 2-3 plunderers. Then it's Subuktigin, there is Mahmud of Ghazni, and eventually we have Mahmud Ghuri. So by the end of 12th century, this was the empire they were able to create. Okay, now it was up to the further sultans what they wish to do in India. है ना? सबसे famous जो sultans हैं कौन कौन है? The most famous personality is Iltutmish, then Balban, then Alauddin Khilji, then we have Muhammad bin Tughluq, Firoz Shah Tughluq, and then finally the Lodis. These are the important personalities that we have in the Delhi Sultanate. So UPSC asks a lot of questions for their policies. Okay, all of them, they pursued some policies. Okay, even during the Delhi Sultanate, it was not so that invasion stopped from outside. All of you know about the Mongols? Yes, UPSC has asked twice this question. अगर आप prelims के question देखोगे तो बार बार आ रहे हैं question. So you have to be very careful about the political history now. Previously इनका ज़्यादा focus था keywords पे. They used to ask keywords in the prelims. अब थोड़ा थोड़ा क्या कर रहे हैं? मेन स्ट्रीम हिस्ट्री के ऊपर जा रहे हैं. और ये इन्वेजन्स, इंस्क्रिप्शन, these themes are very necessary for all of you to understand. Okay, so even after the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, these invasions remained. Okay, so throughout the medieval India, invasions has been an important part, unless the coming of the Mughals. Once the Mughal came into picture, they were able to create a scientific frontier. You understand the meaning of scientific frontier? If we see India and China, Himalaya is a scientific frontier. But if we see towards the west, the LOC, etc., this is not scientific frontier. This is just a plain. हमने artificially divide किया गया है. But if we go to the rivers, or if we go to the naturally to the finally mountains, when these are used as boundary, they become scientific frontier. So one of the reason why India was being invaded so many times, we were not having scientific frontier. This frontier was eventually created by the Mughals, the great Mughals, and the most prominent among them is Akbar. है ना? So their policies are going to be important for your exams. On those you have to understand the critical inputs of various historians. Then you have to understand कि हाँ क्या लिखना है और क्या नहीं लिखना है. That comes later on. So when we talk about Delhi Sultanate, there are 5 dynasties. Okay, it starts with Slave Dynasty. After that we have Khiljis, then Tughluq, Sayyid, and then finally the Lodis. Okay, so which dynasty has the maximum time period? Tughluq. Okay, Tughluq is the highest, and the shortest one is Sayyid or Khilji? Khilji, है ना? बोर्ड पे लिखा वहां देखो. ठीक है, so this is for hardly 30 years. These kinds of factual questions you have to remember for your prelims. Reason being, lucent पे आ चुका है UPSC, है ना? and such information is going to be important. Previously I never cared for this कि इतना ज़्यादा factual focus करना है, but now even while teaching optional I try to make sure कि आपका GS वाले ये सब जो quiz है ना KBC वाले ये भी cover हो जाने चाहिए. Reason being eventually your success matters to me. वो करने के लिए आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा? You have to stay alert in the classes. Facts are important along with the concept. It's not so when we discuss only concept तो हाँ बस मैं conceptual, I'm a thinking person, I cannot remember facts. That kind of mentality is now not going to work. So you have to remember, ratta marna padega. Okay? So Slave Dynasty, Khilji, Tughluq, Sayyid, and finally the Lodi. These are the 5 dynasties that we have under the umbrella of Delhi Sultanate. And all of you know that in 1526 we had the historic battle of Panipat, the first battle. In this battle, Babur was able to defeat Ibrahim Lodi. This is how this dynasty is going to come to an end. Anyway, now when we talk about Slave Dynasty, the first ruler was Qutbuddin Aibak. Qutbuddin Aibak, he ruled for merely 4 years. Reason being, he was playing polo. Polo खेलते खेलते जान दे दी. This is the love for the game. So this was done by Qutbuddin Aibak. There are 2 terms which will be often asked in your exam: founder and real founder. So Qutbuddin Aibak, since he laid the foundation, he is the founder. Okay, but he is not termed as the real founder. So what is the meaning between founder and real founder? Somebody says he is the founder, but somebody is given the title of real founder. Yes. There are some qualities which are attached to a person who is known as real, जैसे प्यार और real है ना, real love और love. Real love क्या होता है? जो धोखा ना दे, जो लंबे टाइम तक साथ निभाए, that is real love. Exactly. So the main work is to create institutions or the structure of the Delhi Sultanate, something which can sustain for long time period. So this work was taken over by Iltutmish. Okay, so Iltutmish is considered as the real founder of Delhi Sultanate. The founder, or Qutbuddin Aibak, he had just declared the sovereignty of Delhi Sultanate, but that does not mean it was sustainable. Okay, there were various personalities which were challenging them. They are going to become the Sultan. All of you may be remembering the name of Kubacha, Yalduj. All these people, they were also contesting for the throne. Okay, so things were not very easy for Delhi Sultanate. But once Iltutmish came to power, he reformed the administration. Okay, Ikta system, this was reformed by him. Ikta system is very important. Reason being, the whole Delhi Sultanate is going to work upon this system. This Ikta system, it was the practice of Arab people. From Arabs, it was learned by the Turks, and eventually it was introduced in India. Okay, so this Iqtadari system you have to understand very well. Reason being, ये prelims में भी question आता है, mains में भी आता है, बार बार आता है. You have to understand its positives as well as negatives. So in brief, the Iqta system was nothing but it was a kind of partnership. It was a partnership of the Sultan with his military governors. These military governors were required to ensure streamlined administration. They were required to collect revenue. They were also required to help Sultan in increasing the dominance of his territory. All these functions were performed by the Iqtadars. Okay, and they were given Iqta. Iqta means a province. Like suppose if you see Delhi, Delhi is the center of India's power. The rest of the 28 states, they are like Iqtas. Okay, we have chief ministers and prime minister. Similarly, like that, we had Sultan and the Iqtadars. This kind of system was created or in fact reformed by Iltutmish. So he was able to stabilize the administration. But when you create administration, you require some centralizing authority on which you can have, you can say, indivisible trust. Like we have the Council of Ministers. Okay, so for that he created one more institution that is known as Turkane Chehalgani. So all the important trusted nobles, they were made part of it. Okay. Similarly, he was able to channelize the economy also. He issued coins of silver as well as copper. You may be knowing their real name, Tanka and Jitan. These economy is very important. It requires currency. Previously, all the currency, it was debased in nature. So he standardized them. Okay, so standards were created for the currency. Similarly, all of you know about Qutub Minar. This Qutub Minar was started by Qutbuddin Aibak himself, but it was finished off by Iltutmish. So even in the domain of art and architecture, he was the one who was able to stabilize it. So the first reign of Qutbuddin Aibak is from 1206 to 1210. Starting from 1211, he was able to stabilize it till 1236. So for 25 years, Iltutmish ruled, and that's how he was able to stabilize Delhi Sultanate. So you require a long reign to stabilize any empire, and they were able to do so. Okay, so the concept of founder and real founder, that we need to understand. But other than that also, you need to understand कि भाई कौन-कौन इसमें important personalities हैं. Aibak, then in between his son Aram Shah. Aram Shah, he was dethroned by Iltutmish. Then after Iltutmish, he himself has said that his daughter, all of you know her name, Rajia Sultan, should become the Sultan, because he thought that all his sons, they were worthless. वो उस काबिल ही नहीं थे बनाने के. But as usual, the society was very orthodox, so they did not allow Rajia to become Sultan. So his son Firoz Shah, he became the Sultan. Eventually, there was a contest between him and Rajia, and Rajia was able to come to power by the end of 1236. This is how Rajia Sultan became Sultan. She is the only Sultan who had such an important distinction. Only female to rule in the medieval India at such a high level of Delhi Sultan or Mughals. Okay? So this, her rule also we'll understand when we'll start with the classes. And after that we had Behram Shah, Alauddin, Mashood Shah, Nasruddin, Mahmud. So if you see, after Iltutmish, so many sultans were changed in a very quick order. Reason being, this Turkane Chehalgani, this institution, now they had become kingmakers. Okay, you understand the meaning of kingmakers? So whichever sultan was not listening to them, that sultan was changed. So that's why it became pertinent, okay, for Balban to do something except, okay, so that this Turkane Chehalgani can be somehow, the influence can be reduced. So he himself was part of it, and he was able to control it. That's why Nasruddin Mahmud, he was able to rule from 1246 all the way up to 1266. He was a religious person, that's why he was not interfering in the administration. That's how it remained peaceful for 20 years. After that, it was Balban. When Balban came to power by 1267, okay, so he knew all the challenges. There were so many challenges which were not addressed by Iltutmish. Okay, and all those challenges were addressed by Balban. So Balban is often considered as the consolidator of Delhi Sultanate. You understand the meaning of consolidator? क्या function होते हैं consolidator के? For ensuring law and order, for ensuring that army work in a systematic pattern. Okay, because those states, they were not built on popular sovereignty. ऐसा नहीं था कि ना आप और मेरी तरह इलेक्शन में जाके पार्ट कर रहे कौन जीतेगा. This is not how those states were formed. Those states were formed on strength. Okay, and it required a streamlined army to take care of that. Okay, he was the one who came up with a spy system. Every administration requires some important knowledge. Okay, right now every state has some intelligence agencies. So he also built an intelligence agency. Okay, and those spies, they were known as Barid. Okay, so this is how Balban was able to consolidate the rule. He destroyed the institution of Turkani-Chehalgani because this Turkani-Chehalgani had become self-serving rather than serving the state. Okay, finally after him his grandson Kaikubad. Now Kaikubad was not that much interested in the state. इनका ज़्यादा focus था किस चीज़ में? Musical competitions में. Okay, so in his palace rather than taking care of the affairs of the state, he used to say कि चलो आज थोड़ा सा नाच गाना कराते हैं, ठीक है? So eventually this led to the final downfall of the slave dynasty. And after this slave dynasty, as all of you know, the next dynasty which came to us, this is the area roughly which was under their control. The maximum part of India which was under the control was during the reign of Muhammad bin Tughluq. This fact you have to remember. Okay? After that we see the coming of Khilji Dynasty. But remember one fact, ऐसा नहीं कि movies देख के ज़्यादा influence हो गए कि हाँ ठीक है, Alauddin Khilji is the founder of Khilji Dynasty, है ना? His uncle Jalaluddin Khilji, he was the founder, but he ruled for hardly 6 years, and all of you know how he was treacherously murdered by Alauddin himself. So from 1290 to 96, Jalaluddin Khilji. After that, Alauddin Khilji himself ruled from 1296 till 1316. So it was a stable rule for around 20 years. And he is the most important monarch of the Khilji dynasty. He had so many reforms, है ना? कुछ नए नए टाइप के reforms लेके आए थे, which were done for the first time. The most famous one is the market reforms, है ना? So market reforms was nothing but it was a kind of PDS system. During his reign, there were maximum number of Mongol invasions. So that's why he realized he need a big army. But big army means expenditure. Can you have a large army without expenditure? It's not possible. But the state was not having that much revenue. Okay, so that's why he thought I can come up with a system in which subsidy can be provided, okay, and with the help of this subsidy, army can be kept at a low cost. Okay, so he divided his empire into two parts. The initial part was the control zone. In this control zone, market reforms were done, and this was the free zone. Here this experimentation was not done. For market reforms, what he did, he created few market, 4 से 5 इन्होंने market बनाया for different types of commodities, है ना? कि एक में सिर्फ grain मिल रहा है, एक में slaves मिल रहे हैं, ठीक है, एक में कुछ important army का मिल रहा है, कुछ में कुछ आपको specifically animals on the sale. Like this he created some market, है ना? And for ensuring that grains are available, he also created godowns. Godowns बनाए गए because like all of you know the function of FCI. क्या करता है FCI? They procure grains from the farmers, and then on the basis of this is transferred to the states. So this is how the system is maintained. Like that, simply it was done by Alauddin Khilji, but he was not using FCI. He was using the Banjaras. Okay, these Banjaras, they used to connect the villages to the towns. They used to bring grains, and that was stored in these godowns, है ना? वहां पे रखता था. Whenever there was necessity, they were used. So all the prices in these markets, they were controlled personally by him. He kept a head, एक head बनाया गया, ठीक है, शाहनाए मंडी, जो मंडी के ऊपर supervision रखते थे. He also created one more spy system, okay, Munhian, who used to take care of these markets. Whatever information, है ना, all of you know कि भाई गांव वगैरह में जब आप जाते हो, ठीक है, तो at the time of weighing नीचे चुंबक लगा देते हैं, ठीक है. So there are so many malpractices which can be happen with the use of weights and measures, quality of the product, etc. So for all those purposes, that spies used to tell Alauddin Khilji कि आज आपकी market में ये चल रहा है. Okay, so this is how he was able to introduce these market reforms. There are various opinions on these market reforms. What was the main function? क्यों बनाया गया? Majority of us has a conclusion. He wanted to have a big army. So far, if we see the reign of Iltutmish as well as Balban, there was no significant expansion of Delhi Sultanate. कुछ ज़्यादा expansion नहीं किया गया था. Reason being, during the time of Iltutmish, they were not having the resources to do so. Even under Balban, Balban was advised by one of his minister कि we should go towards South India और थोड़ा सा conquer करके आते हैं, मजा नहीं आ रहा है यहाँ पे बैठे बैठे. So he said, you are a fool. Right now we do not have the capacity to do so. The moment I am going to go out of the capital, one or the other revolted rebellion is going to start. But by the time of Alauddin Khilji, things had relatively become stable in the internal domain. That's why he thought I should create a big army to tackle Mongols, as well as we should lead expansion in the North India, as well as indirect imperialism on South India. And in that he had a very important personality known as Malik Kafur. Malik Kafur was used for expansion in the south. But his policy was very nuanced. मतलब ये समझदार थे, इनको पता था they cannot have direct control over South India. That's why वहां से सिर्फ ट्रिब्यूट ले लो, पैसा लो और वापस यहाँ पे लेके आ जाओ. Okay, but this policy will be finally revised by Muhammad bin Tughluq, who will say I'll have direct control over South India. Eventually that didn't prove to be futile. Anyway, so if we see Khilji Dynasty, the final person was Nasruddin Khusro Shah. He was eventually overthrown by the ruler Ghiyasuddin Tughluq. Anyway, Khilji Dynasty, this is the area which came under their control. Okay, this part of South India, this was having indirect control. The major territory which he brought in was Gujarat, है ना? All these areas they were brought in. This is the Malik Kafur's march. He was able to defeat various dynasties and then eventually brought lots of wealth for the Khiljis. These are his campaigns of Gujarat, Chittor, Ranthambore, Kara. Okay, and finally they were able to defeat even the Devagiri as well as the Kakatiyas. UPSC में prelims में ये terms बार बार आ रही हैं. Like if you see this Dwar Samudra, okay, this is in which state? Karnataka, है ना? कर्नाटका में यही क्वेश्चन आते हैं इनके. These names there be specifically on the right side you have some options to select the state where it is situated. So you have to take a lot of interest in the historical names of these places. Okay, is it clear to everyone? जब पढ़ाई स्टार्ट करेंगे इनके तो वो भी आपको ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा. Like हाँ ठीक है, Yadavas of Devagiri, they were defeated by him. So you have to remember, yes, these Yadavas, they were contemporary of which dynasty? So it's going to be Khiljis. Such information is coming. All right, ये आपको याद रखनी पड़ेगी. If we talk about the Tughluq dynasty, so it was founded by Ghiyasuddin Tughluq, but he was not able to have a long rule. Reason being, he was having a victory over the enemy, and that was to be commemorated by Muhammad bin Tughluq. बहुत बड़ा stage बनवाया. The moment his father came, stage गिर गया. ठीक है. So his life starts like this. Muhammad bin Tughluq. Okay. In his personal life, he was one of the, you can say, finest personality. Reason being, he had very good knowledge of various subjects. He was a literate person. Okay. But when it comes to his शासन or his rule, है ना, आज भी बोलते हैं तुगलक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन आ गया वापस. Why does everyone say that? The manner in which the policies are changed every day. This is what it is about the Tughluq administration, and everyone points towards Muhammad bin Tughluq. So Muhammad bin Tughluq is a personality. Some historians say he was a genius, the others say he was an idiot, है ना? And it's a very fine line. Reason being, he started 6 reforms. Okay, काफी सारे reforms किए थे. One of that was transfer of capital from Delhi to Daulatabad. Okay, but 2 साल बाद फिर वापस आ गए. ठीक है. He also went for currency reforms, token currency. Like today, right now, if you have जो आपके पास currency है, which is issued by RBI on the behalf of Government of India, it does not have the intrinsic value. कुछ value नहीं है ना उस नोट का as such. But if you have gold in your hand, it has intrinsic value. उसको आप sell कर सकते हो for some money. So such kind of token currency was started by Muhammad bin Tughluq. But this failed. Reason, forgery कर लिया लोगों ने, है ना? जैसे अब आरबीआई जब इशू करता है नोट तो पता नहीं कहाँ से, स्विट्जरलैंड से क्या क्या चीजें आती हैं, कहाँ पे प्रिंट होता है. दैट पेपर इज स्पेसिफिकली डिजाइंड, एंड आपको फिर न्यूज़पेपर के थ्रू बताया भी जाता है कि ये 10 चीजें आपको देखनी है कोई भी नोट एक्सेप्ट करने से पहले. but he did not care about that. So that's why forgery happened and affected the economy. Okay. Similarly, he wanted to start a model agricultural farm. एक 100 by 100 किलोमीटर का एक farm ले लिया, but he did not see that this was a barren land. ठीक है कि जैसलमेर के टीले के ऊपर बैठ के 100 by 100 अब खेती करेंगे. Nothing is going to happen. So there was some fundamental problems with his attitude. Okay, he left too much to his bureaucracy. Okay, he is considered as the personality with the most heterogeneous nobility. Reason being, he allowed people from all castes, all religions to become part of his bureaucracy. But this bureaucracy was not very meritorious, and that's why majority of his projects they failed. Okay, then after them, one of his cousin Firoz Shah Tughlaq, he came to power. Firoz Shah Tughlaq was a person who was not that much good in the military domain. That's why he limited himself to the religious domain. He had a very long reign of around 37 years, 1351 all the way up to 1388. So Firoz Shah Tughlaq, for 37 years he ruled, but he did not solve any of the pressing problem in front of Delhi Sultanate. What he did, he followed the policy of appeasement. जिसको जो चाहिए उसको वो दे दो, मुझे शांति से बैठने दो. ठीक है. That's why there was so much corruption in his administration that at one point of time one of the soldier came and complained कि जो हमारा पास करने वाला एग्जाम है उसमें चीटिंग चल रहा है. Okay, they are asking for money. So he himself took out some silver coins from his pocket and gave that. कोई बात नहीं, जाके दे दो. ठीक है. So that is not expected from the topmost person. Okay, so there was so much corruption in administration. He was a person who was born to a Hindu mother. Okay, so because of this reason, he had a lot of pressure to prove that he is a real Muslim. Okay, and that's why ulemas used him. And because of those reasons, he had to follow a very orthodox religious policy. So because of these factors, Firoz Shah Tughlaq, his major focus was on public construction. He stayed away from various wars, rebellion. All of that was not his cup of tea. After that, we had Nasruddin Muhammad and finally the Daulat Khan. But these were very, you can say, weak monarch. After Tughlaq, this is the, you can see, the maximum empire of the Delhi Sultanate expanded under the Tughlaqs. This was the maximum. Okay, but during this time itself, we are also going to see the start of the disintegration. Okay, all of you know about Vijayanagara and Bahmani kingdom. Both these Vijayanagara and Bahmani, these areas, they are going to split up during the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq itself. Okay, so this is the time where we have the maximum extent as well as the beginning of the disintegration. Okay, remember these things. Then we have the Sayyid, okay, where Khizr Khan, Mubarak Shah, Muhammad Shah, and last we have the Alauddin, Alam Shah. They are not that much important, ruled over a very insignificant area, because in between these two dynasties, one thing which you are going to remember, there is an invasion of Temur. Temur invaded India in 1398. Okay, and because of that, majority of the administration, now this was in a very sorry state of affairs. So finally, it was Lodis which were able to restore the power. Lodis, they were Afghans. So for the first time, we see the theory of Afghan kingship in India, execution. That means first among the equals. Okay, so सब भाई बहन की तरह है. So we have three personalities: Bahlol Lodi, Sikandar, and final one is Ibrahim Lodi. Ibrahim Lodi, he was a very haughty person. Okay, he used to, you can say, disrespect nobles. उनको बुरा क्या कहते हैं ना कि बुला के बेइज्जती करते थे पूरी भरी सभा के अंदर. And because of these factors, eventually everybody was tired of him. And his all uncle Daulat Khan Lodi ने किसको फोन किया? Babar, please come to India. Because everybody was thinking Babar will come, defeat him, and then go back like the previous invaders, like Temur. But this did not happen. Babar himself was a very unfortunate person. Okay, he had lost his kingdom twice. है ना, फरगना भी lost कर दिया और समरकंद भी lost कर दिया. So he was also looking for an opportunity where he can create, where he can begin. है ना? So that's why when he came to India, he defeated Ibrahim Lodi and he never went back. Even though it remained one of the wish of the Mughals to conquer Fargana and Samarkand in the future. But वो भी कभी पूरा नहीं हुआ. There is only one campaign which was imagined by Shah Jahan, but that also eventually failed. Okay, so this is how you have to remember the political information. The extent of Lodi, as you can see, it was very limited. Okay, because all these areas, they had become independent by this time. Shivam, all your questions, whatever historiography you are asking, you can see the Kranti course. Okay. You don't have to repost the same message many times. I am telling you, for historiography, we have a Kranti course that you can think about. Okay. Yes, Imtiaz, the various courses we have, you can talk to the team and they'll help you out with respect to EMI. Okay. Anyway, now let us think. So when we talk about medieval India, we have to understand about Delhi Sultanate. Then we have to also understand about the Mughals. Okay, but that does not mean कि medieval India में दो ही topic हैं. Okay, there are so many other dimensions which we have to talk about. Okay, बहुत सारी चीजों पे बात करनी पड़ेंगी. One important element is regional kingdoms. And the most prominent among them is Vijayanagara and Bahmani. Okay. If you'll see your syllabus from medieval India, many questions are asked directly from polity as well as administration, but from last few years, diversification has happened. They are asking questions from social life, economic also, like what was the status of international trade under these various dynasties. Okay, all such questions. And when we talk about economic life, one area which has become very important is agriculture. Now, they have asked question on agriculture of Delhi Sultanate as well as Mughals. दोनों पे question आ चुके हैं. One part which is becoming very famous is art and culture. This year they have even asked one question on music. कभी नहीं आया था आज तक. पहली बार इसने म्यूजिक पे भी क्वेश्चन पूछा है. पेंटिंग्स पे दे हैव आस्क्ड क्वेश्चन रेगुलरली, स्पेसिफिकली ऑन मुगल्स पेंटिंग्स, बट इस बार कंपैरिजन में दिया था विद राजपूत पेंटिंग्स. ओके, सो द स्कोप ऑफ आर्ट एंड कल्चर हैज बीन इंक्रीज्ड बाय यूपीएससी इन द ऑप्शनल. तो इस बार हम इसको थोड़ा सा और एक्स्ट्रा कवर करेंगे. ऑलराइट, बट अदर देन दिस देयर आर सो मेनी हिस्टोरियोग्राफीज. ऑल ऑफ यू अंडरस्टैंड द मीनिंग ऑफ हिस्टोरियोग्राफी? The manner in which any specific event has been interpreted by a historian, that becomes historiography. There are so many undercurrents of the cultural movement during medieval India. Like from 11th century onwards, we see the migration of Sufis towards India. Similarly, from 14th century onwards, we see the rise of Bhakti movement in India. So both these movements are very important in the cultural domain. So we'll discuss about both of them, Sufi as well as Bhakti. उनके बारे में काफी डिस्कशन करना जरूरी है. रीजन बीइंग, whenever a paper is made, it's not like कि सारा क्वेश्चन आपको political history से मिलने वाला है. There's going to be a lot of differentiation and your preparation should resemble that. किस तरीके से उसको follow करना है. Okay. So, when we talk about Vijayanagara Empire, the Vijayanagara Empire itself has some dynasties, है ना? So, they were established by two Sangama brothers. There was Harihara and Bukka, starting from 1336. Okay, the basic event of the origin of the Vijayanagara Empire itself is very debatable. Muhammad bin Tughluq brought both these brothers to Delhi and they were converted to Islam. Okay, but when they went back to their city, they were reconverted into Hinduism by their guru, and that's how it is often said that it was the religious factor which led to the establishment of Vijayanagara Empire. We'll discuss this debate in detail जब हम इसकी पूरी सारी information को verify करेंगे, and then we'll come to one specific point. But the first dynasty is Sangama, then we have Salva dynasty, then we have Tulva. Tulva is important for Krishna Deva Rai, the most powerful monarch. He ruled from 1509 all the way up to 1529. Okay, and when Babur came to India, Krishna Deva Rai was his contemporary, and he has given the information also that Vijayanagara Empire is very strong. Last empire is Aravidu Empire. Okay, in between all of you know about the Battle of Talikota. Okay, this was fought in 1565, in which the various Deccan states, okay, which were previously part of the Bahmani Empire, they collaborated, and that led to the downfall of Vijayanagara Empire. The last phase or the last dynasty is Aravidu, and they shifted their capital from Vijayanagar all the way up to Penukonda. Okay, Andhra Pradesh में change कर लिया था from Karnataka. So Vijayanagara Empire, it's always going to be important for us because UPSC has a habit of asking many questions. One question which I used to do a lot of time in my foundation was कि इन दोनों के क्या factors थे for the conflict. Okay, and this year in UPSC you must have seen the paper. Same question आया था कि क्या major factors थे for the conflict of Vijayanagar and Bahmani. Vijayanagar was established in 1336. Okay, and Bahmani was established in 1347 by Alauddin Bahman Shah. So whichever dynasty who are contemporary, there is a very high chance of fighting. Reason being, both of them, they are competing for the same space and time. Okay, so this Tugabhadra river region, this is very rich in resources. That's why the Bahman Sultans, they wanted to get a piece of it. Okay, so these were the two empires which you need to remember. The Bahmani Empire, it finally disintegrated into 5 Deccan states. Okay, काफी जगह पढ़ा भी होगा, निजाम शाही of अहमदनगर, आदिल शाही बीजापुर, कुतुब शाही गोलकोंडा, इमाद शाही of बेरर, and बरीद शाही of Bidar. Okay, so these were the 5 areas. Okay, this is how the Bahmani Empire got split into, and eventually all these areas were to be annexed by Mughals. So that's why we should have a little bit of clarity about it. Okay. So when we talk about Mughals, the most important battle starts with the first battle of Panipat from 1526 onwards. Babur itself, he also ruled for only 4 years. Then came his son, his name is Humayun. What is the literal meaning of Humayun? Lucky or fortunate. But he is the most unfortunate person in the history of Mughals. Right. So he started his rule from 1530. He was not very brave in terms of general, etc. From 1530 to 1540 he ruled, but he was eventually defeated by Sher Shah, okay, in the battle of Bilgrim, okay, no Chausa as well as Bilgrim. So for 15 years he had to stay outside India, and he was helped by the Shah of Iran. Eventually he came by 1555. He was able to get his empire back, but eventually in 1555 he fell down from the stairs of a लाइब्रेरी हैं, पढ़ते पढ़ते मौत है ना, इतना प्यार पढ़ाई से. सो दिस इज व्हाट एवरीबॉडी इज डूइंग राजेंद्र नगर, है ना, पढ़ते रहो बस सुबह से लेके शाम तक. सो हुमायूं डाइड, देन कम्स द मेन पर्सनालिटी, दैट इज अकबर. Akbar knew he had so many challenges in front of him when he was coronated at Kannauj. Okay, एक छोटा सा स्टेज बनाया गया था उनके लिए कोरोनेशन के. हाँ, अभी भी आज भी है वो पंजाब रीजन में. ओके, थोड़ा सा स्टेज बनाया गया था टू कोरोनेट हिम. ओके, आफ्टरवर्ड्स initially he was very young, so he required support of some important personality, and that person was Bairam Khan. He became the regent, कि मतलब वेल विशर, वो उनके स्टार्टिंग का सारा रूल उन्हीं ने ध्यान दिया. From 1560 onwards he himself started looking after his empire. Then he came up with various systems which eventually became the hallmark of Mughal Empire. है ना, all of you know about the Mansabdari system, है ना, Ane Dehsala system. So many systems were created. So just like Iltutmish, here Akbar is considered as the real founder of Mughal Empire. Because he is the one who streamlined the administration with Mansabdari system. He stabilized the revenue system. With a Daisala. He was the one who was able to ensure territorial sovereignty. He pursued some policies which became the most important for the foundation. Rajput policy, his religious policy, which eventually transformed into Sulh-e-Kul. Okay, his Deccan policy. All these policies are important for us. Okay, because for understanding the importance of Mughal Empire, we have to see the contribution of Akbar. And there are many historians. One of the most famous one is Jadunath Sarkar. He often gives remarks that Akbar was born to create an empire and Aurangzeb to lose one. Okay, and he again says that Akbar created the empire with the support of Rajputs and Aurangzeb lost it by losing the support of Rajputs. Okay, so we'll discuss about how the Rajput policy came into picture. What was this Rajput policy all about? When somebody is called as real founder, so just like you can see easily, Mansabdari system was able to ensure reformation in both civil as well as military. Revenue system, because every state requires a stable revenue. And finally, territorial sovereignty. So he was able to get empire into a well-packed form. So Akbar remains the most important personality, and that's why UPSC asks a lot of questions on this. Similarly, the policy of Sulh-e-Kul, this is very famous. Sulh-e-Kul is nothing but universal peace. Shanti se kaam karo. Okay, this policy of Sulh-e-Kul became very prominent part of this Mughal Empire. But as we go on from Akbar all the way up to Aurangzeb, there are going to be some changes in the religious policies. Okay, Jahangir, as usual, if you know, if one generation has worked, the next generation is always going to enjoy. तो उनका काम बस दो ही था. He used to focus on wine and paintings. Okay, this became the hallmark of his period because he himself was not that much interested in administration. So administration came under the control of his wife. She was Noor Jahan. ठीक है, तो दैट्स वाई हिज रेन पे यूपीएससी का क्वेश्चन हमेशा आता है कि हाउ पेंटिंग रीच इट्स एपिटोमी अंडर जहांगीर, है ना. जहांगीर इज द पर्सन हु हैज रिटन हिज ऑटोबायोग्राफी known as Tughluq Jahangiri, in which he mentions, I can easily see the work of various painters in any painting. He can easily distinguish. Reason being, he himself was a very fine painter. तो उनका मेजर फोकस पेंटिंग पे चला गया, जहां से पोर्ट्रेट पेंटिंग, पोर्ट्रेट मोड जो आज यूज करते हो, है ना, that portrait painting was started by Jahangir. So he was the founder for that. Okay, after that we have Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan initially revolted against Noor Jahan as well as Jahangir, and Jahangir was put in jail. House arrest में डाल दिया था उनको for many years, and that's how Shah Jahan came into picture. Shah Jahan himself was very strong. Okay, but the major contribution of Shah Jahan, it comes in the field of architecture, and that the most famous one is the wonder of the world, that is Taj Mahal. But other than Taj Mahal also he built so many other monuments, है ना. कौन कौन से उनमें से famous? Like Red Fort, okay, Jama Masjid. All these are important monuments which are built during his reign. So he also ruled for around 30 years. Finally we see the coming of Aurangzeb. At the time of the, you can say, change of the kingship, there were so many fights, there were war of succession. The most favorite son of Shah Jahan was Dara Shikoh, but he was not allowed by the nobles because he was a very liberal person. Reason being, he himself used to read Upanishad. Okay, that was not liked by the ulemas. While on the other hand, Aurangzeb, he was an orthodox person. He used to follow everything which was written in Quran literally. That's why he had the support of all those personalities, and finally he came into power. He was a very brave, very strong military general. So during the initial phase, the Deccan policy, the most successful Deccan policy was of Aurangzeb, but till 1687. After 1687, there was rise of one more regional power, that is Marathas. Okay, so Marathas under the Shivaji, they started rising from the middle of the 17th century. Before Shivaji, under his father, that is Shahaji. By 1674, they were able to create Savrajya. But after Shivaji died in 1680. His son, he was executed by Aurangzeb in 1690, that is Shambhaji. After that, a Maratha reaction started. All of them, they went against the Aurangzeb. So starting from 1680s, he had to stay in Deccan area, and that's why he stayed away from his main administration. And all these weaknesses eventually led to the downfall of Mughal Empire. Till the time Aurangzeb was in power, things were relatively stable. Okay, but the foundation of the empire had become crumbling. Okay, like you will see his religious policy, he started following a policy which was often said as, you can say, anti-Hindu. Reason being, all the old temples, they were destroyed, new temples were destroyed, people were not allowed to celebrate their festivals in public. All such measures was taken by Aurangzeb. That's why he lost the most important community in numbers. Hindus, they were the most numerous, so Aurangzeb lost their support. Similarly, he lost the support of Marathas. In the initial years, Marathas, they were serving as Subedars, they were even serving as Mansabdars, but all of them, they went against Aurangzeb after the execution of Shambhaji. So he stayed in Deccan for the remaining of his time and died fighting there in 1707. After that, the things changed drastically. That's why in history, all these 6 important rulers, they are known as Mughal One. Just a movie hoti na? They are Mughal One, or the mighty Mughals. And after the death of Aurangzeb, we are going to see the smaller people coming to power. Okay, and from 1707 all the way up to 1858, when the final personality, he was sent to Rangoon. Okay, that is Mughal second. Within this, there are so many personalities. हम जब class करेंगे इसमें पढ़ेंगे, but the most famous person is Muhammad Shah, है ना, Rangila ji. He was a famous dancer, है ना, famous trained dancer of Kathak. So rather than thinking about the administration, he used to do Jugalbandi in his court. Tata Thaiya shuru ho gaya tha. Okay, so Mughals, with the period of time, they became very weak. As all of you know, they were defeated in one important battle, Battle of Karnal. Okay, that was fought around 1739. And after that, they came under the, you can say, they became more of a protectorate of Marathas. And when Marathas themselves got defeated in 1761, the whole empire started crumbling. They had become just nominal in nature. And during the same phase, English were rising. They were able to first win the battle of Plassey by treachery. There was not much battle in 1757, but by 1764, they were able to defeat the important powers of India, including the Mughals. So from that time, we are going to see the rise of the English, and Mughals, they'll become just a power in the name. Okay? So when we talk about the disintegration of the Mughal state, that does not mean the system collapsed altogether. Okay, some of the states which are known as successor states, they continued the tradition of Mughals, and these were the 3 governors who eventually founded these 3 states. All of you know about Hyderabad. It was founded by Nizamul Mulk. Okay, and he was himself a governor. Okay, then we have Awadh. Okay, Murshid Quli Khan. He himself was having a lot of patronage toward that. And then finally we have the Awadh mein hamare Sadat Khan. Okay, and in Bengal we had the Murshid Quli Khan. So these were the 3 people who were directly linked to Mughals. That's why these states are known as successor states. Okay, but there was some rebellious state also. Okay, and they were Jats, Sikhs, Marathas. Okay, you can even include Afghans. These were the 4 powers which arose after the downfall of Mughal Empire. And finally, some of the states, they were already independent, they started becoming prominent. That is Rajput, Mysore, and finally Travancore. These were the 3 states which became prominent. So this is how you have to understand the political part of medieval history. ठीक है. Just like yesterday, we'll discuss about some important areas which you need to keep in mind. So just note them down. Just note down the important themes. As yesterday we had already discussed, question number 1, 2, 3, 4. The first question is of map. We had already understood the themes of 2, 3, 4 जो हमने डिस्कस किया था कल एंशिएंट इंडिया के लिए. But the question number 5, 6, 7 and 8 they belong to medieval. The fifth question in this UPSC asks 5, 10 markers. And the rest we have 3 questions and 6, all of 50 marks. Fifth question is mandatory. You cannot escape. चाहो तो भी नहीं छोड़ सकते. Salman will discuss about the Mansabdari system. एक बार क्लासेस जब होंगे अच्छे सब कुछ करेंगे. Okay. So this is mandatory for all of you. You need to understand the structure of the exam. And out of 6, 7, 8, है ना, total अगर आप देखोगे, how many questions do you have to do? 5 questions. The first and the fifth question both are mandatory. And then rest you have to choose at least one question from each section, A as well as B. फिर आपके पास एक क्वेश्चन का चॉइस रहता है. That is up to you. That depends on various factors. Like I'm telling you right now, if you're very good with facts, you should choose medieval, because यहाँ पे रट्टाफिकेशन का बहुत ज्यादा वेटेज. ठीक है, because they ask the policies और सीधा आपको enumerate करना होता है. But when you see ancient India, concept clarity is very much required. Suppose question आता है कि धर्मशास्त्र मॉडल ऑफ पॉलिटिक्स किसने फॉलो किया था नहीं किया. First you should understand what is the meaning of धर्मशास्त्र, then उसको अप्लाई करना, all those things, or the manner in which the Varna system has evolved throughout ancient India. All such questions they are going to require conceptual clarity. Okay, there may be some topics on which you will not be able to develop conceptual clarity at the time of giving exam. वो possible है. But in medieval, it's all about coverage. जितना अच्छा आप coverage करोगे, more marks you're going to fetch. Okay, so let us understand the themes from where UPSC is asking question these days. किसी ने पेपर देखा है? What are the themes which you can think of? जैसे एक थीम जो इस पे बहुत क्वेश्चन है, that is battles, है ना. They are asking a lot of questions on why Rajputs got defeated. What is the reason? All of you know about the battle of Tarain, but there was also one more important battle of Chandawar, है ना, that was fought with Jayachand in 1194. Such battles are being asked by UPSC. So write down. You have to remember all the important battles. Okay, specifically in 10 markers. Like last year they asked how Babur was able to defeat Ibrahim Lodi in the first battle of Panipat. So you should have a little bit of understanding of all the important battles. Next question may be on the battle of Talikota. Okay, it can be there. Third battle of Panipat is itself mentioned in the syllabus. Majority of us have no idea what was the second battle of Panipat was all about. Okay, so you should have an understanding of the battles along with the dynasties and the importance of such battles. This you have to prepare. Now this is the changing theme. Okay, second, we should have understanding of the policies of various important personalities. Starts from Iltutmish, why he is known as the real founder, what all measures was taken by him. Then afterwards you need to understand about Balban. Balban is famous for his policy of blood and iron, his high-handed approach, just like Bismarck, who did not believe in any kind of democracy. कोई समझाने में कोई time waste नहीं करते, सीधा impose it. So that on that UPSC is asked question. Alauddin Khilji, his market reforms have been asked. Other than market reforms, also he has done many reforms. In army, the system of Dag and Chehra was started by him. He started paying military in the cash, है ना, कि उनको land वगैरह में देना बंद कर दिया. He also did some administrative reforms. He was able to realize there are some problems in the administration that I need to take care of. Like one of them was the alliances between the nobles. These nobles used to have marriage alliances, खुद में शादियां वगैरह करवा के, and they used to start a revolt against the sultan. तो उसके लिए उन्होंने against किया. Then one was about the habit of drinking wine. So he said कि nobody is going to drink wine even though he himself was addicted to it. Okay, so eventually the public consumption of the wine, it was prohibited. So we have to understand the policies of all important personalities. Okay, starting from Iltutmish, then Balban, Alauddin Khilji, Muhammad bin Tughluq. Yes, you have to understand कि what level of positives and negatives can be seen. Firoz Shah Tughlaq, इनकी आपको policies पढ़नी पड़ेंगी. Similarly, when we go towards the Mughals, here you have to understand the policies of Akbar and Aurangzeb. Like this year they have asked the Deccan policy of Aurangzeb. ठीक है, देखो पढ़ाई तो हम बहुत सारी करेंगे, will take care of all the syllabus, but there are some particular areas where you have to see कि मुझे ज्यादा मेहनत करनी है. These are the areas where you have to do more historiography. Reason being, क्वेश्चन कहां से आएगा? यहीं से आता है. This is another thing. Then one important area is cultural domain. In the cultural domain, there are two very important topics. One is Sufi, other is Bhakti. These two areas you have to prepare very well. In addition to this, we have to also take care of painting. Like you, all of you know, there was no significant development of painting under the Delhi Sultanate. Reason being, they consider it un-Islamic. Okay, but when we go towards the Mughals, they started following the liberal tradition. It was Humayun who brought two very famous painters, Abdul Samad and Mir Sayyid Ali. These two painters came to India, and after that Akbar started the tradition of Tasveer Khana. उन्होंने एक department ही बना दिया painting के लिए. This is how the development of paintings happens in India. So that you have to remember. The painting का जो सबसे ज़्यादा development है, it is under Jahangir. And similarly, art and architecture में, when we talk about architecture, the majority of the development can be seen under the Shah Jahan. ठीक है? So that also you have to consider within the cultural domain. With this, there are two more themes where UPSC is asking question. One is early medieval period. The second theme is 18th century. These two themes are equally important. Okay. These two themes are equally important. Early medieval period is important. It talks about transition of polity, economy, society, religion. We'll discuss all those transitions, why they were happening, what were the important factors. But you have to keep this in mind. Okay, there is one very prominent debate of feudalism. This debate of feudalism was started by Marxist historians. There we have D.D. Goswami and R.S. Sharma. They gave the concept of feudalism from above, feudalism from below. Feudalism from below means people at the ground level, they were able to capture power and they were now competing with the more important centralized authority. On the other hand, feudalism from above means central power itself is allotting land to people, and this is how the power or the delegation of authority is being done. These two concepts have been used by them to stress upon the concept of feudalism. Suppose when you are a Marxist historian, this is a requirement to put more emphasis on economic factors while writing history. If you are not doing it, तो आप Marxist नहीं बन पाओगे. That's why it is a compulsion for them to use the concept of feudalism to stay relevant in Indian history. But we'll discuss how to what extent feudalism was there in India or not there. So UPSC has so many questions on this concept. Okay, on feudalism पे बहुत question आता है. Similarly, during the early medieval period, there was so many development in the field of agriculture. So agriculture आपको एक theme अच्छे से पढ़नी है. Early medieval period as well as Delhi Sultanate and finally Mughals. Okay, some important development with respect to agriculture also happened during the reign of Vijayanagara. Okay, वहाँ पर भी काफी ज़्यादा factors important और कुछ some important things were done specifically for irrigation. So all such themes we have to cover in early medieval period. In the early medieval period, there is one theme of the religion of Tantrism. उस पर भी UPSC को कुछ अलग ही प्यार है उस टॉपिक से कि what is Tantrism. So we'll discuss about Tantrism. There are certain practices. Many of you may be aware of the Panch Tantra. या पंच तत्व, कुछ 4-5 चीजों में बिलीव करते हैं कि ये करना ही करना, मांस खाना है, मच्छी खानी है, ऑल दोस थिंग्स, मदिरा पान होना चाहिए, ऑल दीज दे आर द एलिमेंट्स ऑफ तांत्रिज्म, है ना। काफी लोग हंस रहे हैं, सारे तांत्रिक फॉलो करते हैं। एनीवे, सो तांत्रिज्म पे यूपीएससी ने कुछ क्वेश्चन पूछे हैं। दिस इन टर्म्स ऑफ आइडियोलॉजिकल डोमेन, तांत्रिज्म इज वेरी फेमस because this was the only religion which provided equality to women. This was not being provided by any other religion as such. Okay, so that's why Tantrism, it became very prominent during the early medieval period. And it's not so that Tantrism remained an independent entity. It entered all the religions. Okay, it entered Hinduism, Buddhism as well as Jainism. सबके अंदर कुछ elements Tantrism के आ चुके थे. Okay. All those things we have to discuss in the early medieval period. When we talk about 18th century, there is one concept which is used by the colonial historian. That is the concept of Dark Age. Okay. So this Dark Age concept has been applied to so many centuries. Like one is post-Mauryan period. Whenever they have seen any kind of political disunity in India, they have used the concept of Dark Age, because colonial historians, their major focus is only on polity. They are not concerned with economy, society, religion. So कोई लेना देना नहीं है. So this period, then early medieval period, and then finally 18th century. Reason being, they were trying to justify their rule. Okay. You must have heard about the concept of white man's burden. Okay, so white man burden, it was a justification, and for that they used the concept of Dark Age. So 18th century remains a very debatable century. Reason being, you can see the downfall of the Mughals on one side. On the other hand, we see the rise of British. By the end of this century, British, they were in power. On the other hand, in 17th century, by the end of 17th century, India was around contributing 25% to the world GDP. Okay, but by the 18th century, we were more or less going towards the downhill. Okay, so because of this, 18th century in itself is a very important topic, and we'll discuss about what kind of political formation was there. Do we see any economic progress? Then there is debate with respect to, do we see any sharp change from 18th century to 19th century? Naturally, the colonists, what they were trying to do, they were trying to make sure one thing, they criticize the 18th century so that their century, 19th century, looks good in the eyes of the people. They can justify their rule. Okay, so we'll cover all such topics. This remains important for your exam. Okay. This 18th century is going to stay important. Reason being, जो आपका क्वेश्चन नंबर 8 है, हर साल वहां पे एक 18th century पे क्वेश्चन आता ही आता है. This is more or less a set pattern. Okay. Along with this, regional kingdoms, topic number 6. In these regional kingdoms, one, you can focus on South India. In South India, there are two dynasties, Cholas and Vijayanagar. UPSC asked more questions on these two dynasties, and other than this, Marathas. The sixth theme which you need to develop for medieval India is regional kingdoms, and in this, Cholas and Vijayanagar and Marathas. इन पे सबसे ज्यादा फोकस करना पड़ेगा. यस, हाँ, शेरशाह से भी आ सकता है कभी कभार, एक आधी बार आता है, लेकिन 5-6 साल में एक बार आता है. ओके, इफ यू सी यूपीएससी जनरल स्टडीज ऑल्सो, ठीक है, इन जनरल स्टडीज ऑल्सो यहीं से क्वेश्चन आने लग गए हैं. इफ यू सी द जीएस पैटर्न, आपको ज्यादातर क्वेश्चन कहाँ पे आते हैं? दे कम इन प्रीलिम्स. मेंस में तो ऐसा medieval इंडिया से डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन कोई आता नहीं है, ठीक है, इट इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड, इतना ज्यादा डिटेल में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. कभी क्वेश्चन आएंगे तो कहां से आएंगे? कल्चरल डोमेन से ज्यादा क्वेश्चन आते हैं, भक्ति एंड सूफीज. This is from where they are asking the questions. All right, and eventually in prelims, if you do or you follow this much, आपके ज़्यादा अच्छे marks आने वाले हैं. Early medieval period is one area from where they are asking so many keywords. Like जैसे आपने 2016 में देखा होगा, अरे घट्टा से क्वेश्चन आया था. It was nothing but the water lifting device. Okay, and we discussed this all this in early medieval period. So आपकी पूरी जो preparation है of medieval India, these are the things which you need to keep in mind. They are going to be important for prelims, GS as well as optional. तीनों चीजों को हम अच्छे से कंबाइन कर सकते हैं. There is nothing much difference. Okay. अब एक बार जल्दी से 2-3 वो टॉपिक डिस्कस करते हैं which remain in limelight all the time. Like the one is Sufi, the second one is Bhakti. So what is this Sufism all about? What is the meaning of Sufism? ठीक है, they were mistakes. The word Sufi means soft. Okay. So they show the liberal side. Why Sufism became famous? कुछ तो reason होगा. There is a system of silsila or order which started under the Sufis. So what they came up with very liberal interpretations of Quran. Okay, it was not possible for every person to follow Quran as it is. So these people came up with liberal interpretation. These interpretations started becoming famous. Okay, and that's how in India at the beginning of 12th or 13th century, 12th to 14th orders, they came. The most famous order was Chishti Silsila. Okay, there were two very important. First is Chishti and second is Suhawardi. UPSC इनके ऊपर क्वेश्चन भी पूछता रहता है 10 मार्कर में बार बार. ठीक है, even in GS you are going to find questions with respect to these two orders. Anyway, so the first order is Chishti, the second is Suhawardi. There are marked contrasts between these two silsilas. Where Chishti, they talk about that we should live a simple life. Okay, we should do meditation and we should focus on sama. Sama, understand? Use music as an instrument to reach to God. All this was used. On the other hand, the Suhawardi, they said we should take political patronage and we should not think about living a poor life. We should always think about living a rich life. So there is so much contrast in the ideologies of Sufis, and UPSC has started asking question on that. Previously they used to ask very easy question, what is the contribution of Sufis, and it's very easy for everyone to understand. क्या क्या contribution है इनका? They talked about universal brotherhood. Okay, they reformed the various practices of Muslims or the Islam. All right, they were also responsible for the, you can say, development of music. Then upliftment of the lower masses. They were responsible for making religion a personal affair. Okay, so the contribution of the Sufis is multifaceted. हर dimension में कुछ ना कुछ इनका contribution आता. Yes. Yes, their policies also impacted rulers. So if you say Muhammad bin Tughluq, he used to play Holi in his court. है ना? So from where do this come? Because of the teachings of Sufis. And one biggest contribution of the Sufis, it's come in the form of composite culture. There were two religions, है ना? They were not having interaction in the previous centuries. So what was required? What was required that the religious policies or the religious ideas, they should not start clashing. And it was required that they should create some kind of composite culture where the fairs, festivals, language, etc., all of this could be easily understood by each other. So the creation of composite culture in India, the main contribution goes to Sufis. Okay, because of Sufis, a challenge came in front of the Hindus also. Reason being, they were reforming their religion, but at the same time, the Hindu religion Hindu religion itself was facing a lot of challenges, and the most important problem was that of social evils. Okay, what are the various social evils that we have? Caste system. Okay, the negatives of the caste system. Because of this, the various communities were divided. Okay, child marriage, sati, all such traditions which were affecting the vitality of the societies, they were in the Hinduism. If anybody wanted to become a man of religious merit, he had to take the help of Brahmins. So the religious knowledge, all those scriptures, all that knowledge was the monopoly of Brahmins. So it was not possible for a common man to develop a religious merit. At that point of time, there was so much linkages of social life with the religion. So without reforming the religion, conversions had also started from one religion to the another. So it became an overall challenge. Okay, it became an overall challenge to reform Hinduism, and that's why the Bhakti movement started. Bhakti movement was not like it was only because of Sufis. Bhakti movement was in India, in South specifically. There all of us know about Alwars and Nayanars. With the period of time that Bhakti movement under the guidance of Ramananda, it came to North India, and throughout 15th and 16th century we are going to see a lot of reforms to be done by major personalities. All of us know about Saint Kabir, all of us know about Guru Nanak Dev. Okay, some of them, their teachings focused on Saguna type of bhakti, means they consider that God has some kind of form. Okay, while the other talked about Nirguna, where the God was considered as formless. Okay, so Sufism, it's also had some impact on Bhakti. Some of the elements of Bhakti, like universal brotherhood, etc., they were borrowed from Sufism. Okay, as all of you know, Islam was not having the caste system when it came to India. Even though today it also has the caste system, but at that point of time caste system was not there. Okay, so Bhakti was able to use this ideology by the interaction with the Islam. So that's how we see the development of these cultural movements in both 15th and 16th century, and this led to creation of a overall composite culture in India. So UPSC has time and again asked such questions, okay, of both Sufism as well as Bhakti. ये आपका prelims में भी आता है, mains में भी आता है, ठीक है. General studies के लिए such themes are very important, which you have to keep in mind. ठीक है, इन्हीं टॉपिक्स पे ज्यादा क्वेश्चन आते हैं बार बार, rather than some new question, new innovation नहीं होएगा. Similarly, if you see Krishna Dev Rai is a very important personality. Okay. So Krishna Dev Rai himself remains an important personality. He had 8 important personalities in his court. They were known as Ashtadiggaj. Okay. He has written one very famous book known as Amuk Tamallada. So UPSC often asks question in GS on such personalities like Krishna Dev Rai. He was asked in 2016. Similarly, all of you know about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, he was a Vaishnava saint. Question was asked in 2017. So whenever you are studying for GS, UPSC का जो पेपर रहेगा, it's a bit personality centric. Okay, when the question are with respect to ancient and medieval. Sometimes they ask such questions which focus on one or the other system. उसमें वो तो फिर आपका direct optional से ही आ जाएगा कि मनसबदारी system पे question आ गया, all such things. But these personality specific questions are more important for GS. GS के लिए ज्यादा फोकस रहता है, बट ऑप्शनल में आपका ज्यादा फोकस कहां पे रहेगा? दो 6 themes which I have told you. ठीक है, उन पे जब जितना ज्यादा फोकस करेंगे the number of marks are going to increase. And our major focus would be on those specific areas. Without specific thinking about those areas, we cannot get very high marks. ठीक है, बुक्स आपको जो पढ़ना है फॉर ऑप्शनल स्पेसिफिकली कौन सा रहेगा? बीए इग्नू. बीए इग्नू की 2 जो वॉल्यूम्स हैं, दैट्स व्हाट यू नीड टू कंसल्ट. बट आवर क्लास नोट्स विल कवर एवरीथिंग. सब कुछ कवर कर लेंगे. अब आप लोगों के साथ, दोज ऑफ यू हैव टेकन एडमिशन नाउ, the time that you have is relatively less. Keep this in mind. Reason being, prelims सबसे ज्यादा important होता है ना? पहले 100 में से 1% में आना है, and then you have to show your talent of answer writing, of showing your comprehensive knowledge. So that always going to be secondary. So make sure कि आप prelims का भी पढ़ना इसके साथ में start करें. And while preparing for prelims, आप थोड़ा सा लूसेंट के अंदर जो medieval India का basic facts लिखा हुआ है, that you can revise, because UPSC is framing questions from that book. Information which you going to find there, वहां से भी आ रहा है. Along with the optional, we are also going to put a lot of emphasis on the facts. Okay. So 18th century के बाद जो एक important area है, that is of Marathas. ठीक है, around Marathas, all of you know, it was the most famous personality was Shivaji. After that we have Shambhaji, he was executed. Then there was a more of a fight or a civil war starts. Okay, Rajaram, Shahu, all these, but the famous personalities like Shivaji, nobody was able to emulate him, and that's why the political dominion of the Marathas, it gets shifted towards Peshwas. Okay, and the famous Peshwas like Balaji Vishwanath Bajirao, and then we have Balaji Bajirao. Balaji Bajirao, he was the Peshwa at the time of third battle of Panipat, and after hearing about the news, he lost his life. Okay, finally we see the rise under Madhav Rao, but Madhav Rao himself, after his death, there was a first war between the Marathas, right? Eventually there was treachery by Raghunath Rao, and finally that dragged British East India Company into the internal affairs of Marathas. Okay, then finally all of us know it led to the rise of Confederacy. So initially they started with that area, and with the period of time they were able to increase their dominions, okay, both in north as well as south. Okay, so when we talk about the states, various states, so these are the various states, 6 in this area, Jat in this specific limited area. Okay, this is the area of Awadh, Bengal, Malwa, finally Marathas, and finally we have Hyderabad. So this is how the India was in the 18th century. If we see the extent, at one point of time they were able to have this much extent in India, but there was one very big limitation. Okay, because of this one very specific limitation, there was one limitation. Reason being, they were not focusing on creating administration. Administration बनाने पे ध्यान नहीं देते. Their major focus was only on expansion, and there were 2 important policies which they used: Chauth and Pradeshmukhi. Chauth was nothing like, if you don't want invasion from our side, give us 25% of your revenue, you and I will remain happy. Okay, and the second was Sardeshmukhi, in which 10% of the revenue was to be given. Sardeshmukhi जो mostly था वो उनके अपने एरिया में कलेक्ट करते थे, but Chauth was to be collected from the neutral party या फिर जो उनके rival party थी. Because of these 2 systems, Marathas, they were hated in various areas. Reason being, if you are torturing someone कि revenue दो मेरे को इतना ज़्यादा, nobody is going to become your friend. Okay, and when they were fighting the battle of Panipat, no dynasty of the nearby area did give any support to them. Reason being, Marathas के पास एक चीज की कमी है, lack of diplomacy, है ना? They are not good diplomats. They are good warriors, brave people, but they are not good diplomats. And this lack of diplomacy became one of the major factors for their downfall, है ना? And सबसे ज्यादा बड़े डिप्लोमेट कौन है? ब्रिटिश. दे आर द बेस्ट वन, है ना? इनिशियली व्हेन दे केम टू इंडिया तो आके बताते कि आपके लिए मैं वॉच लेके आया हूँ, है ना? नाउ जस्ट गिव मी वन स्मॉल फरमान. So they were diplomats, and because of this diplomacy, they have created the largest empire on earth. But when we talk about Marathas, they were able to extend their dominance both in north and south. But because of the policies which they pursued, the lack of attention given to the administration, this led to their fall. Okay, this is our various confederacy which you can remember: Peshwas of Pune, Gaikwad of Baroda, Sindhya of Gwalior, Bhosle of Nagpur, and finally Holkars of Indore. Okay, this is the confederacy. आपको थोड़ा नाम भी याद रखना चाहिए whenever question comes, because there is a transformation of their political system. Initially it was monarchy, then Peshwa system, and finally we have the confederacies. Okay, so all this transition we are going to discuss in the various classes, है ना. ये इनके various areas हैं which you can remember. ठीक है. Then finally India was now getting disintegrated into various states, and what was the main gainer of this? This was British, starting from 1757. By 1858, when they had to eventually leave the policy of expansion, है ना, after the revolt of 57. Till then they were able to create empires. So eventually 60% of India's geographical territory overall, it came under direct British rule, and the 40%, the small states, they remained. Still some larger states remain. The largest states were Marathas, Mysore, then Punjab. Okay, these were the three important states which were eventually defeated by the British. The challenge of Mysore, it was finished off in the 18th century itself by fighting 4 wars. Then they gave lot of attention to Marathas. They were finished off by 1818. Then finally the Punjab was defeated after death of Ranjit Singh. Ranjit Singh died in 1838. By 1839 they started eyeing for increasing their dominion in the areas of Punjab, and they got the opportunity by 1845. Okay, after the first Anglo-Sikh war, they were able to impose the Treaty of Lahore, and finally they were able to annex the kingdom during the tenure of Dalhousie. Dalhousie is considered as the finest imperialist. His main focus was we should focus on creating territory, बाकी सब बाद में देखेंगे, and this became the risky proposition. He used every possible means, साम दाम दंड भेद सब यूज कर लिया, है ना, इंक्लूडिंग द डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ लैप्स, है ना, विच वाज अ वेरी बिग इनोवेशन, है ना, कि इवन इफ यू आर फेलिंग इन योर पर्सनल लाइफ, आपको यहाँ से भी हटा रहे हैं हम साथ में. ओके, दिस इज हाउ डलहौजी वाज एबल टू क्रिएट बिग एम्पायर. दीज आर द वेरियस मैप्स कि हाउ इंडिया वाज नाउ इवेंचुअली डिवाइडेड इनटू वेरियस पार्ट्स. ओके, सो आज का हमारा जो टॉपिक ऑफ डिस्कशन था, इट वाज मोर ऑफ द ओवरव्यू कि यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड द timeline, you are able to understand the various dynasties, you are able to see the various geographies, कहाँ पे कौन सा empire था. So this is just an eye opening session. आपको इसके बाद में अब क्या शुरू करना है? If you wish to read, तो आप अपने बेसिस पे सिर्फ एक NCERT पढ़ सकते हैं, that is of कौन से ऑथर है? सतीश चंद्रा. ठीक है, that you have to remember. पढ़ना है तो NCERT पढ़ लो इसका. If some of you may have also read Tamil Nadu NCERT, that is also fine. अगर आप जल्दी से पढ़ना चाहते हो तमिलनाडु एनसीईआरटी पढ़ लो, उसमें थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ में सब कुछ मेंशन किया हुआ है. बिकॉज फॉर ऑप्शनल स्पेसिफिक एनसीईआरटी इज नॉट इनफ. रीजन बीइंग सतीश चंद्रा हिमसेल्फ हैज सम लिमिटेड हिस्टोरियोग्राफी. दैट्स व्हाई कवरिंग द हिस्टोरियोग्राफी रिक्वायर्स टोटल प्रोपोजिशन, एंड दैट इज कवर्ड इवन इन बेटर टर्म्स इन द बीए इग्नू. उनकी 2 बुकलेट में किया हुआ है, बट अपने हैंडआउट्स में सब कुछ कवर्ड है, तो ऐसा परेशान होने का जरूरत नहीं है. टुमारो विल डिस्कस अबाउट मॉडर्न इंडिया. मॉडर्न इंडिया में देखो, अब इफ वी सी फ्रॉम द जीएस पर्सपेक्टिव, 3 क्वेश्चन आते हैं इन द जीएस. 6 या 7 में से 3 क्वेश्चन मॉडर्न के आएंगे, बट इन प्रीलिम्स नाउ इट हैज बिकम रिस्की. लास्ट ईयर कितना क्वेश्चन था? 2-3 क्वेश्चन आ गया मुश्किल से. ठीक है, आउट ऑफ 16-17 क्वेश्चन. So that's why ancient and medieval is going to stay your priority for prelims also. Okay, उसके ऊपर बहुत ध्यान दो. रीजन बीइंग पास होना जरूरी है, एंड पास होने के लिए सबसे आसान तरीका है हैव गुड मास्टरी ओवर हिस्ट्री, बिकॉज मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द एस्पिरेंट दे आर गोइंग टू लैक इन दिस एरिया, एंड इफ यू कैन मेक इट योर स्ट्रेंथ, आपका फायदा है. वन ऑफ द रीजन फॉर मी स्कोरिंग वेरी हाई मार्क्स इन प्रीलिम्स वाज हिस्ट्री. यहाँ पे गलती कम होता था, जहां पे एवरीबडी, ये देखो कंपटीशन में क्या होना चाहिए, वेयर एवरीबडी इज फेसिंग चैलेंजेस, प्रॉब्लम्स, यू आर डोमिनेटिंग इट, एंड दैट्स हाउ यू गेट सेलेक्टेड. प्रीलिम्स में अगर आपको बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स लेके आने हैं तो यू कैन नॉट इग्नोर हिस्ट्री, It's not feasible. You have to give a lot of attention to this. All right. So we'll meet tomorrow at the same time, 3 p.m. We'll discuss. Yes. सोर्सेस से क्वेश्चन पहले ज्यादा आते थे, आजकल यूपीएससी ने काफी कम कर दिया है सोर्सेस का डायरेक्टली. ठीक है. पहले क्या होता था कि जो आपका 50 मार्कर था ना, उसमें 4 क्वेश्चन भी आते थे सोर्सेस के डायरेक्टली. उत्तर मरूर एक साथ एक बार पूछ लिया, जितने भी इंपॉर्टेंट बुक्स रिटन किए हैं, है ना, इब्न बतूता ने लिखा है या फिर बारनी ने लिखा, सब कुछ पूछते थे. बट दीज डेज विल कवर ऑल द सोर्सेज, डोंट वरी अबाउट इट. बट एज सच एज अ पार्ट ऑफ स्ट्रेटजी अब कम हो गया है पहले से. जैसे इस साल आया था, लेकिन वो कलहना आया था बस एक राजा तरंगनी का, वो भी एंशिएंट इंडिया में क्वेश्चन डाल दिया गया था. तो सोर्सेज एज सच ज्यादा नहीं आ रहा है. तो विल, इसका मतलब देखो, 6 आपको मैंने पैरामीटर्स दिए, दैट डज नॉट मीन कि बाकी सिलेबस जाए भाड़ में. दैट यू डू नॉट हैव टू डू. इस पे एक्स्ट्रा फोकस करेंगे सो दैट यू गेट मोर मार्क्स देन अदर्स. ठीक है. दिस इज द बेसिक फिलॉसफी. So that's it for today.